Episode one of the Canon Event Pod. So essentially, we just decided, we just chat shit about Arsenal 24/7 all the time anyway. So why not just record it and put it out there? And if people want to listen, they can listen. If they're not, then it's just more therapeutic for us, really. So I'm Aaron, and this is Sim. But yeah, you go ahead, Sim. You can introduce yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Just a couple of cousins who have nothing better to do than talk about Arsenal, vent about Arsenal, feel the pain about Arsenal. Obviously, after yesterday,
Yeah, no, I mean,
believe
not
that
much
winning
pain.
Champions League is possible.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah, basically.
And then we'll see where we are after Sunday as well. So it's I think it's something that without your initiative, Aaron, or let's say a canon event
Oh,
happening in your life.
I know. I mean, it sounded like a cannon when my Achilles basically exploded like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So essentially, just a quick background: both avid footballers, played football, watched football, kind of been football crazy for basically all our lives. And unfortunately, about 2 weeks ago, I snapped my left Achilles. So that kind of just prompted me to say, we've been thinking about doing this for ages, and let's just do it. So for all you Spider-Man fans out there, I'm sure you'll understand the play on words. And for anyone who's not a Spider-Man fan, then you should become a Spider-Man fan and watch those films.
Obviously, yeah. Just first be an Arsenal fan, and then second be a
That's
Spider-Man
it.
fan,
It's
and
literally the
then
two best things ever,
it's the
right? Like
easiest thing.
Spider-Man's best superhero and Arsenal's best team.
Literally,
So like
literally.
we're very, very privileged. But yeah, so what we'll do is let's just get into it. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of introduce this. Obviously, 7-1 yesterday, which is really, really quite interesting and really unexpected, to be honest. I mean, I thought we'd win, but I didn't think it would be that convincing. So yeah, just what were your thoughts really just regarding yesterday's performance and how you felt beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, thinking that we would win at the moment is still a very good positive mindset to be in. I overheard I was going to play football, so going off of your intro about the fact that we play a lot. You've recently blown up your Achilles. I'm practically running in slow motion these days with all the injuries that I've had too. And I heard a couple of people going to play, and they're like, "Oh yeah, PSV and Arsenal's on." He's like, "Oh, what do you reckon the score's going to be?" And I said, I just walked past, probably be minus, probably minus 1-1 or something. But no, in all honesty, I think there was a lot of good in the performance, definitely, particularly after some really complicated and quite drab results that we've had against West Ham and Forest. It didn't look like that we had the attacking capability necessary even to maybe progress even further in the Champions League. But that was all, let's say, put to bed, obviously by a much more attack-minded and fluid Arsenal, something that we've been missing for a long time. But at the same time, also a very bad PSV side, I think,
Yeah,
made us look a lot better than
yeah.
maybe we have been in recent weeks.
I
What,
mean,
what, are, what are your top
could
line
have been,
thoughts?
yeah, I mean, it could have been really different, right? Because obviously we got very lucky. Like before it went 1-0 to us, they hit the bar.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
and the game could have obviously turned really
Canon
different.
event.
Yeah, literally. To be fair, like you said, I think pretty early on from the beginning of the game, I think I saw that they weren't very good. Like, I mean, their previous results in the last few games haven't been very good. I think they've lost quite a few games. I think they lost to Go Ahead Eagles or drew against them.
I think they drew like 3-3 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they've been shipping goals, essentially. They've been shipping
Yeah.
goals. But as we know, like in history of football, the way teams perform in the league and the way they perform in the Champions League can always vary a lot. And obviously, they just beat Juventus and got through against them. So you can't obviously take them lightly. Just looking in the first like 10, 15 minutes, I think, before we scored, I can't remember when we scored actually, but they didn't look very good. They looked like they were like easy to get at. There was a lot of space in behind, and they looked like they wanted to play us at the game, which is obviously not the smartest thing to do, I think, as you can see in kind of comparison to how teams like West Ham and Forest have set up against us and other teams as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's precisely it, right? I think we've noticed that in the Champions League in pretty much most games that we played, other than Atalanta, that I think set up in a way that a lot of, let's say, mid-table Premier League sides would against us, which is that sort of low block, let us have all the possession and then come and hit us on the break. And they decided that they wanted to go toe to toe with us, which to their detriment, it meant that okay, even if we, the fact that we got lucky with not conceding that opportunity that crashed off the bar, it meant that it was very open.
I mean, it was a great challenge. If you look at it, it was a great challenge by Gabriel, though. I think if you realise, he basically his body and the foot in the way, where the guy can only really hit it in one area, and because he does that, he hits the bar. If Gabriel doesn't do what he does at that intensity, like he always does, then it goes in. So, as much as people think it's a bad miss, I don't think it's a bad miss at all. I think
No, not at all. I think Again, at the
Yeah,
speed at which also the ball, when he receives the ball, to then getting it out of his feet, to then try
yeah,
and hit the
yeah.
shot, and then you, as you say, you've got Gabriel coming in at like full steam ahead.
Yeah,
It's
so
yeah,
good.
it's a
He's
really
just so good. Like the guy is just so good. Like he's incredible. I mean, I could talk for like hours about Gabriel, about how good he is. But that was just like another moment where I was like, man, if this guy wasn't in our back line, we would have so many more issues because we really do get away with a lot because of him.
That is, and again, I think you can tell his leadership is improved significantly, and his the way in which he sort of keeps the back line together, his distribution with the ball as well has improved. And of course, yeah, everybody's been speaking about the fact that he can score so many goals with his head, even though that's dried up a bit recently. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, the evolution of him over the last 4 to 5 years since he's been at the club has been insane. And I think everybody will often say that he doesn't get the praise that he deserves. But in fact, all those people who are saying again that he doesn't get the praise he deserves is meaning
Yeah.
that he's getting a lot of praise
Exactly.
now,
Yeah. I
undeservedly
agree with you
so
in
as
saying
well.
that. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it just okay. Like just moving through. Obviously about the game. I think we wanted to talk about kind of how much the fullbacks offered. Obviously in attack today. I think Mikel he mentioned it in the post match. I think he was saying about like Timber's obviously there scoring, and then you've got Calafiori who comes on, and you've got Miles who's got the assist, and then you get Tierney and Zinchenko. At one point there was like a line of like three left backs in a
Left
row.
backs, left
Yeah,
back FC.
just left backs everywhere, like just left back mania. So like how important do you think it was to obviously just have those players on the pitch, and how do you think we kind of changed our tactics, almost changed, but really used them and utilized them more so to make sure that we didn't feel like we were lacking too much up front?
No, it's exactly what I noticed. Just with the fact that even Timber gets up and scores the opener, and then you've got Miles Lewis-Skelly who sets up the second for Nwaneri. And I think what we've missed in perhaps the most recent weeks, at least from my observations, is that they have been playing. They've been inverting a lot, but not really using the width of the pitch. And I think what they did really well yesterday, and you could see maybe a little bit of a tactical shift, that okay, if we're going to get more goals, then we're going to need more players to contribute to the attacking phase, and that was super clear and evident from the way in which we were playing. They were really bombing on both fullbacks as well, whereas I think quite often it's been sort of one taking the lead in terms of getting forward and the other coming in and inverting more. So, and you can tell that just adds more attacking threat. Now when you don't have any natural, let's say, you're missing your main natural forwards, I think then you need to be able to share that load. And as in, is there of what did you think of Lewis Skelly? He's been living on the edge a little bit as well in terms of his the way he's been playing, but then he contributes. So yeah,
But like I said, but it was I think he's lucky in the fact that I think in England he's going off, like he's off in England, right? Like in the Premier League he's off.
it's awesome.
But
Of course, of course.
what I would say, they just can't wait, man. They can't wait to send that guy off. Like they can't wait to send us off. But
100%.
what I would say is that I don't think the first challenge is the yellow card in the first place.
No, it was soft.
Yeah, it was very soft. Like, I mean, it's a foul. Absolutely, fair enough, it's a foul. I mean, even then, it was pretty soft, but it's a foul. But to book him for that, I think, was a bit silly. And I think the referee knew that anyway. So he knew, like, okay, that probably, I was a bit hasty with that. I'm not going to now send him off because that would just be ridiculous. And even then, like, the challenge that he makes, it looks a lot worse than it is. If you watch it, he goes in, and he kind of goes in with his left foot. He doesn't touch him with his left foot. It's his right foot that kind of catches him on the back of the foot. And obviously the guy goes down. And I mean, I would do the same thing. I'll be rolling all over the floor. Like I'll be rolling off the pitch. Like so trying to get him sent off because at the end of the day, you're trying to get any advantage that you can. But yeah, I think the referee did the right thing in my opinion and just said, listen, like just calm down. Do I think it was necessary to take him off after 35 minutes? I don't think so. But I just think Arteta's just got PTSD about like losing players, and he's like, I don't want to lose another player here and then put more burden on the guys who are already tired and then get more injuries and more issues. So he just said, you know what? Like, and this is the good thing about having like a 15,000 left backs like in our squad is that he can be like, cool, we'll just chop and change. Like you have half an hour, you have half an hour, you have half an hour. So I think he was lucky. But prior to that, as he is always, I thought he was imperious. Like I thought he was fantastic. Like you can't get by him. Great on the ball, one-touch football. He basically acts as like another midfielder, like we want our left-backs to do with Rice and with Partey and obviously with Ødegaard. And then on top of that, he's getting up into a point where he's, combining and putting a great ball into the box as well. So what I would say is I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's had a bit of bad press, obviously, from a lot of things going on around him. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to, as an 18-year-old, like to have all that around you and then still perform, at the highest level every single week, and then have to take on more kind of media narrative about like should have been sent off. When in reality, most people will understand he shouldn't have even got the first yellow card in the first place, you know. But, you know, it's typical. But yeah, I think just to answer your question, I think he was fantastic for the 35 minutes he was on. And I think he would have been fine, to be honest with you. I think he would have been fine till half-time. But yeah, you know, just better to be, when you're 3-1 up, I think it's better to be safe. Or 3-0 up, I think we were at that point. I think it's just better to be safe than sorry, right? And it's not to say Calafiori didn't come on and be, you know, the new Filippo Inzaghi, right? So, like it's amazing.
Just scoring from right wing with his right foot, you know, as one does.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted something before the game, right? And I think everyone knows my thoughts about like Mikel Merino and like his position in the squad and what he's good at. And I think, you know, being a midfielder myself, I know what it's like when you play up front. Because what happens is when you play up front, and if you're not a striker who like touches the ball all the time and gets involved, it gets quite frustrating. Because you realise you don't touch the ball a lot, like you get really frustrated. So you kind of just naturally move back into the middle because you're like, I want to get involved. Because as a midfield player, the way you get a feel for the game is by touching the ball and by getting the ball and turning and passing it, right? And you're not used to kind of like only having like one touch, and that one touch has to be like proper. Like it's got to be, you know, 100%. It's got to be a goal or a good pass. So for him, he wants to get more of a feel of the game. But what he does is that he just kind of sinks more and more into the midfield. And then we leave this huge gap up top, you know. So I made this tweet about how I think Calafiori would probably be a better striker than him.
Yeah.
Like, and that's because I just think Calafiori is just like, and we can talk about him after properly, but I just think he's just a natural footballer. Like, you know, some players who are position based, like that's the position. Sure. I don't think he's like that. I think you can tell that guy, I want you to play right back tomorrow, and he will be fine. Like, and I think you can tell him, I want you to play right wing, and he'll give you a 6-7 out of 10. Like he's going to be, and he'll do something that you're like, damn, can you actually play there? Because he's just a natural footballer. The way he moves, the way his mind works, like the runs he makes, even the finish. Like, his finish was just so instinctive. Of like, I know where the goal is. I don't even have to look up. I know where the keeper is. I know where the goal is. Off the post. Like, I mean, if Haaland scores that, everyone's like, that's a great finish. So I think he was.
And I mean, he's got it in his locker, hasn't he? For sure. Like there is something innately. I think this is something very unexpected, and sometimes I'm not even sure if he knows what he's going to do. But in of itself, that makes him, you could argue, a very good candidate to play higher up the field. Because he just gets a sense. Yeah, for sure. I think, well, so very clearly, fullbacks had a great day. Also, I mean, there's a lot to be said about PSV's tracking of our fullbacks as well.
Yeah,
their wingers not really supporting in any way.
I don't want to like overstate our performance. Like, again, scoring 7 goals away from home in Europe, like amazing, absolutely great. They are bad. Like they are not a good.
They are very bad. I was just looking at the Go Ahead. I mean, again, you're getting beat by a team called Go Ahead Eagles, and they lost. They lost against them in the semi-finals the week before in the Dutch Cup, and then they also got beat by them in the league.
Yeah. And again, the thing with football is that, again, we can talk about this a bit later about kind of like people kind of saying, oh, we're through already, and like booking their flights to Madrid and stuff like that. And obviously we probably are, but the thing with football is like, you know, they could be awful yesterday and they can have the game of their lives next week, right? So they were just very bad yesterday, and I think on top of that we were also very good, and that's for a 6 goal smashing basically, right? Like we're slapping them. So but you know, things can change very quickly. But yeah, I mean, I think we agree. I think it was probably a night for the fullbacks, really.
And again, it's just the way in which they stretched out the play and they gave us that attacking impetus. But I think also something that we have been potentially speaking about a lot recently is sort of we've been missing that spark in midfield. And whilst the let's say the theme of the game, as mentioned by Timber in his press conferences, is that, you know, it's an opportunity to change the narrative of what's going on. And there's one particular midfielder I think we'll pay a lot of attention to later on in the pod, which is Martin Ødegaard. But I think one person who I would have really liked to give player of the match to would be Declan Rice, because I thought he was immense yesterday.
Yeah. As usual. Monster.
And again, we both played in midfield, but yeah, what did you really like about Rice's performance?
Yeah, it's just that for me, it's just like a typical Rice performance, right? The guy is just absolutely everywhere. He very early on, I noticed that like when we had just started in the first like 10-15 minutes, like, at a point where maybe I'm watching it like, get it, go forward, get it. He's just a bit like, you know, just chill, get it, let's move it, let's get a hold of the ball, like let's just get a handle on the game. And I think it just shows his maturity as a footballer, Whereas I think, maybe a couple of years ago, he gets that and he just starts driving forward and like galloping forward like he used to do for England and West Ham. He's just got it, and he's becoming a really kind of like polished European kind of midfielder. So earlier I thought he was really, really good. I think he was really calm. He's winning absolutely every single duel. Like they just don't get any sort of joy on that left kind of space of midfield. He carried on. His engine was fantastic. I thought he supported the attack well. I thought every single time we attacked, he was there. So obviously the first goal, that ball is just fantastic. I don't even know if he knows Timber's there. I know you probably know someone's there, but what a ball that is on his left foot. Even for I think the goal, the Nwaneri goal, he's in the box. For the Ødegaard goal, he's in the box. He in the 90th minute, he's running down the pitch like when Raya's got the ball. Probably I'm sure Arteta's there. Like, please stop sprinting. Like, just stop. Like, I don't need you to like pull up right now with a hamstring or something like that. But he's just absolutely everywhere. His engine is absolutely crazy. Like, there's that meme, right? That or Declan Rice and it's like fogging machine.
Yeah.
And it is. He's literally a fogging
machine. Yeah. For sure he is. And I think, to be honest, whilst most Arsenal fans might have thought when we made him our record signing that he was there fundamentally to replace Partey as the sixth, I think his biggest asset since he's joined has been his box-to-box capability. Like, the way in which he can just bring the team forward with those sort of like long gallivanting kind of runs and bring us up the field has been one of his biggest strong suits. I think also, there is an attacking flair to him. I think he does relish sort of taking some players on, and maybe hopefully getting him into better positions where he can, like that the goal that he scored that was ruled off for offside. Insane finish, like an absolutely ridiculous finish. And I think over the next few weeks, it's going to be so important to get him to that level again where he is able to crash into the box and really, really stretch defences and make those centre halves think of not just Marino or think of Nwaneri, but also think that Declan Rice can come out of nowhere and potentially cause a problem in the box.
Yeah.
So I think we've missed him in a way, and I think he's even been very honest about his own performances as well over the course of the season. He just seemed knackered after the Euros.
Yeah, as I say, he said he's just been playing football all year.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always that Euros lag, and I think we saw that a little bit. He had that kind of toe injury around the Chelsea game, and I think he wasn't really fit until after Christmas, and then we then kind of had other injuries, and I think. Just going back to the fullback point, I think because the fullbacks were so dangerous and there was so much of a problem for PSV, the centre of the pitch opened up a bit more. And when that happens and you give players like that space, he's just going to take it with open arms and he's just going to carry on, isn't he?
Do you see him? What's his long-term position? Is it the left eight? Is it the holding six? I made a joke. I didn't make a joke actually. I had a Freudian slip, which was. Now that we're going to sign Mendy, meaning that I'm going to say Super Mendy. Hopefully that deal comes over the line. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully that deal comes over the line. But you see Super Mendy is potentially coming in. Still think that his long-term position is in the six, or is it
the only kind of players I've seen us being linked with are kind of sixes, and I think obviously most likely from what I can see, Jorginho is probably going to be leaving us, and so is Partey as well, and then we've got kind of a big gap there. I don't think Arteta would be playing him there so consistently if he didn't see that was his long-term position. I mean, my opinion is it's tough because for me, I'm of the view that I don't really like, unless it's centre backs really. Positions in football, unless it's centre back or striker, positions in football for me are not really a thing. I just think, listen, you're good footballers. You go where you're needed during the game. You might have your area, but you do what's needed in the game. If Declan Rice finds himself on the wing and he's going at someone, I still think he should be able to go at someone and cut in and put a ball into the box, right? He's not a winger, but I still expect him to do that. So whether or not he's supposed to be playing six, which is what we talk about a bit deeper, or whether or not I think he should be playing apparently, which is someone who does box-to-box stuff. I mean, we've not grown up like that. We've just grown up in the era of there's two of us in midfield and one of us is staying and one of us is going.
I mean, okay, Vieira and Gilberto were very different, still on a completely different level to and even Vieira and Petit and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a configuration of the midfield that becomes a little bit more traditional in that sense, where
that's what I would hope.
Yeah, is that you almost have that. Ødegaard plays literally more of a 10 rather than this kind of right-sided 8 thing that he's got going on. You've got more of a diamond in that 3.
Yeah.
and then whoever goes, whoever stays is sort of depending on the situation.
Exactly.
Really.
It's depending on kind of like, you're looking around like, okay, well, I'm in the position now, and you have the football IQ to say, well, okay, he's gone and he's going there, and I'm just going to just slowly kind of manifest myself into this position where if we do lose the ball or if it does break, I'll win it back and I'll sit here. I think more so that 8 and 6 thing is more so about someone who's receiving the ball from defenders, if that makes sense. So it's about who's the kind of the central acting point to receive it. So for us, what tends to happen is Raya gets it, centre back split wide, centre mid comes into the middle and drops in quite deep, and then we kind of have this thing where we try and play out from there, and Raya acts as like an extra midfield defender, essentially passing the ball out. That's really how I see that kind of position. I think in an offensive sense, once you move past that phase of the pitch, I don't think it's a case of like, oh, someone's just going to sit there and stay there and not do anything. I think even with Partey, like you see sometimes there's times where when we're on the right hand side of the pitch, he's literally like on the edge of the box, and Rice is kind of more like just sitting there. So I think it just depends on where we are, on what side, depends on who of one of those midfielders does what they need to do. Because with Zubimendi, I think I've not watched a huge amount of him, like I'll be honest. I've watched a little bit of him, and what I noticed from him when I watched him in the Champions League is that he loves to drop into near the centre backs constantly. Like he loves dropping in near the centre backs and picking it up and like moving the ball. So if that's what we're getting him for, then I'd expect Rice to kind of go further forward. The one thing that I want to see more from Rice, and it's hard, right? This is what I'm going to say is hard, is receiving it on the half turn in pockets. And that's tough. Because when teams low block us, like Nottingham Forest who just flood the midfield, and like West Ham who just flood the midfield, and then they get their strikers to also then sit on the centre mids as well, it's very hard to receive that ball and turn out and not lose it. And I do think he can do it, but I think that they're too worried about him losing it and then getting sprung on. So I think there needs to be a fundamental change in how we shape our minds to our midfielders receiving the ball in that space for him to progress further into that position. Because you can't, for example, in my opinion, be an 8, the 8 that we want, and sit outside of that block. You need to sit in that block, like you need to sit inside of it. Because like back in the day when we used to have Cazorla, Monreal, Sanchez as like this little left-hand side kind of combination pod, they would all just link up and sit inside this little block, and you'd have like 4 players coming over there trying to get it, and then move.
You don't know who's going to receive it, right? And you don't know what they're going to do. And I think
and that's what we did yesterday.
It's
right?
precisely what he did. There's a lot more rotation in the positions, and I think it made it much more difficult for PSV to. And I think you're completely right. The way that Arteta are very similar to the school of Guardiola as well, which is that, like you say, you don't really play positions. You play sort of in like areas, spaces, and then you coalesce with your teammates depending on what is the situation and who might be best to receive it based on their skill set, really, to make that attack happen.
Yes. So what do you think? I think it's going to just change based off who we're playing and when we're playing, and like again who we've got available, because I don't think But what do you think?
It's ultimately what Arteta's also been saying, right? I think he's been a bit limited perhaps with I think a party who hasn't been, let's say, to the same standards and levels as what we've seen him in previous seasons, and then not having the personnel to really change and shift up the midfield in the way that he would like. I think Marino, he's tried it also significantly at that left 8 position, and it hasn't really given him the kind of results that he wanted. And so my opinion on it really is I do fundamentally like Rice. I really like Rice there. I think he gives us that energy and that zip. I think we're missing, let's say, that consistency in position, or let's say chemistry between on that left side as what we've had traditionally on that right with Saka and Ødegaard and Ben White. And I think Rice could be someone who week in, week out can always play in that position.
Yeah.
He's going to be there. I think the one thing I will say to perhaps why Rice also might not necessarily have been considered as the number 1 option now at number 6 is that whilst his range of passing is excellent, like a few games back, the game's now eluding me.
I think it was a City game. I think the one where he.
Yeah, the City game, precisely, exactly. The City game where he pinged that ball from the left side and switched the play. And I think when he has time and space, I think he's fantastic at it. And again, he'll find balls that I think a lot of players wouldn't. But in that 6th position, particularly when you've got, particularly against like higher level opposition as well, you need to turn over the ball much quicker from defence to midfield. And I think this is going to move us on to the next part of what I want to discuss, is that I think Ødegaard has suffered quite significantly because he's been made to come a lot deeper to pick up the ball and try and then make the start off the attacks almost, and that's why. Yeah. So on the point of Rice, he's perfect. I think he's great in that. I think he's going to do really good stuff in that 8 position.
Yeah.
And then if we get a player like Zubamendi who can feed the ball quicker into those pockets, like you were mentioning, right? Like, how can he receive the ball on the half turn? Can it be faster? And that will create the chaos in the back line for those medium to low blocks in a way that we would want. But then moving on to the next point, I think Ødegaard in that midfield engine room has I think he's had a really difficult season so far.
I wanted to just quickly just backtrack on 1 second. I was just going to mention a point for anyone listening who wants to know exactly why probably we think Rice is ideal for the 8 position. So the awful game you went to, right? Man United, the FA Cup game.
If not probably the worst Arsenal game I've ever been to.
Yeah, so like that's it ties for me with the Sporting Europa League game that I went to on a Thursday night, which was just absolutely awful. So that was the most awful game. But when Rice came on, do you remember when he came on?
He changed
and
it.
he was just like, and he played left foot, and he was just box crashing. He had a header, he saved, like he had a shot that would go tip the pass. Like that's what he's like. At 8, that is what we want from him.
That's what you get.
That was literally textbook of that. Why he is amazing. Get the ball from like literally halfway line, drive us off the pitch, 1-2s. Outside in the box. But yeah, like that's just one point I wanted to make, because I was like, I remember watching it thinking, damn man, like he needs to be there, because if he's doing that, then there's not I don't think the player in the world is going to live with him, like if he's doing that, because you just can't run with him, you can't outmuscle him, you can't run with him. He's got unreal technique, he's outmuscling you in the box, he's raising up for headers, he's putting the ball in the box, and he's just driving you. And when you got that engine, you can't stop that momentum. He's just constant. But like you said, moving on to the Ødegaard point, I think we were saying that he's had a bit of a difficult season. What did you make of his comments after the game, where he actually himself said that he's not been the best this season and that he wants to kind of improve his stats based wise, he wants to get more goals and assists?
I think one of the reasons as to why he's captain is because he's very forthright and very, very self-critical, and he expects that of his teammates as well in order to achieve the erfolging standards that are expected at Arsenal and of this team, really. And yeah, he's rightly so. He's the first to admit that he hasn't been really playing at the level. I think obviously there's the injury that kept him out for a couple of months after he came back from the September international break, and then maybe his personal life circumstances as well, becoming a dad and all that kind of stuff. It all factors in, right?
Yeah, I mean, high ankle sprains are there's quite obvious instances in history where high ankle sprains are very difficult to come back from. LeBron James had a high ankle sprain, I think it was a couple of seasons ago. Maybe time flies so quickly that it might have been later than that. Sorry, but they're very hard to come back from. Especially in football. Basketball's one thing, but football, when you're getting knocked,
and they don't heal in the way that there's no linear sort of like healing process with them. You find that I've been feeling great for 2-3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you'll feel it again, and you're like
or like it's not right for ages, and then suddenly it's fine. Like it's just suddenly one day it becomes fine. So it's one of those things, isn't it? Like I think there's a mental aspect to it as well, where you don't push yourself in certain areas or in certain ways, or manipulate the ball with your foot in a certain way because you're worried. So I think that again could be a factor as well, isn't it?
No, you're right. I think that's there maybe has been a level of trepidation to his play, and to your point earlier, and I think this is what Arteta has potentially also been expecting of his players, that you're all good players. So even if you're missing your best mate, in his Ødegaard's case, Saka, and even Ben White to an extent as well on the right hand side, it still shouldn't mean that your performances levels should dip so dramatically. And I think that is probably where he's also coming at it from, is that, okay, well, in light of the fact that we're missing Saka and Ben White, I, as a very exceptionally gifted footballer, need to be able to step up and contribute where we're missing, and that's in goals and assists.
So how did you feel? So like just moving towards like more pointing about yesterday, I think like his performance probably divided opinion quite a lot, right? Like I think and it probably was different in different parts of the game. What were your thoughts about his performance yesterday? Like let's take it as more of like a first half and then second half. So what were your thoughts about performance first half? Which
is the perfect way to describe it, and I think it might divide opinion, but it won't divide our opinion. Which is first half shit. How many passes he misplaced, and even then sometimes the way in which he was receiving the ball, the time it would take him to look up to then eventually play a pass that was then cut out by another player, just seemed, I think the change, he's a perfect example of how the narrative changed for a player right in the midst of that game,
it's probably so indicative of someone who's just lacking confidence.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
can
think
see
it's
it.
pretty obvious, right? Like that's how I felt. I felt the same way. Like I mean, I think the first it was it was like the first 5 seconds, and the ball got played to him in midfield, and he let it roll under his foot, and I was like, oh, here we go again, man. I was like, just here we go. Like when that happens to someone like that, I know straight away you're not on it right now. And there
You're
was a
thinking
couple
about
of
other
times, I think,
things, right?
yeah,
And you just two in your head, and that comes from a lack of
yeah.
confidence, not playing instinctively. And
And the square balls he was playing, right? So he was playing a few square balls where it's like he knows what he wants to do and he knows he should do it, but because he's thinking about it, he delays it. And by the time he plays it, the person's already come and cut it out, or he's underhit it, and then you can see his head just drop and then just drop and then it just and then what happens is you try to play your way out of bad form, and when you do
it's the
that,
only thing you can do, really. I
yeah,
think that's
you
what
keep trying
Arteta's
to do
been trying
more,
to do with
and then you lose it
Sterling.
again, and you lose it again, right? And I think that was really frustrating because I was like, I think for us, I think we hold him to a different standard, right? If he wasn't like, again, and this is not disrespectful, like I'm not trying to disrespect Mikel Marino or anything like that, but if it's Marino and he's having that performance, I'm a bit like, okay, well you're doing some stuff all right, and some stuff's not going very well. It's not too bad. Like we've got to pick it up though. But when it's Ødegaard and he's your captain and he's your creative influence, and when he's on form, he's probably arguably one of the best midfielders in the world. You're like, come on, like we're missing a lot of players, and we need you to like really be on it today, So I think yeah, like you were saying, I think first half he wasn't very good, was he?
No, but again, great players, as you mentioned, will find a way to be able to play themselves into the second half. I think the way the goal came about, we'll talk about the new star boy, Nwaneri, who made that happen in the first place later. But yeah, he got his foot, properly planted himself, made sure he got over the ball, hit it into the ground, and made sure it went in, and that.
Rice also made sure he knew where he was going to put it as well. He just pointed, like put it in the goal.
Just put it there. Yeah, and that makes a world of difference to his confidence. And then the second goal and the assist are products of the fact that he's feeling better in himself. Okay, it helps also that we were like already 3 goals up at that point, or 2 goals up, sort of immediately into the second half. So there's more space.
I was going to pause, but talking about Ødegaard, really, I think the goal was quite important for him. I think when you're in that form, and I think we've all been in that form, right, where like you're playing a game and just nothing is going right, for you. You want a chance exactly like that, right? Like on your stronger foot, 6 yards out, like open goal. You just want to pass that into the net, right? And it was just perfect for him. I think that was the most ideal thing that could have happened, and I think that again just gave him the confidence to kind of say, well, like actually, I'm fine. I'm fine. I needed that, and I needed that to just kind of push away my own internal thoughts of me not playing well and me having a bit of bad form. And I think he progressed quite well after that, actually. In my opinion, probably due to the fact that I think PSV kind of just gave him a lot of space at that point. Yeah. Again, whether or not that's by design or like they just kind of just couldn't handle where he was picking up positions, I just thought he had a lot of availability to pick the ball up really kind of quite deep in midfield and then just drive at the defence quite a lot. And I think from then, he was quite good. I've got to give him his props. I think he was quite good from then. I thought he just got his confidence back. He was picking up the ball. He was playing the ball nicely. He was releasing it quicker. Whereas before, I think he was trying to hold onto the ball too long because he was like, I need to do something good. So I don't want to just give it and then like not get it back, because I feel like I need to do something good here. But once he got the goal, I felt like he just settled down a bit and he just thought, you know what, now I can just play my game. And that's the Martin Ødegaard that we know and love, right? The guy who like gets it, gives it, moves it. And I think the main thing that you talked about was obviously he's missing. My biggest concern for him and a big issue, and the reason why I think he suffers so much is because I don't think he's the best carrier of the ball past people. I think he can do it, but especially this season, especially with that high ankle sprain that he had, and probably his reservations with carrying it and getting hit, he's not done it as much. So I find he's the most effective when he's just like on the edge of the box or he's near the box. And when Saka's there, when Ben White's there, Ben White gets it and he'll just gallop and he'll just take the ball 30 yards up the pitch. Or when Saka's there and you give it to him from midfield and he will just draw about 3 players onto him, take the ball at the pitch and then give it back to Ødegaard at the edge of the box. Then I think he's really at it and he's really just like, he's not killed himself to kind of get the whole team up to that point. But when he has to do it all by himself, it's very tough for him. And I get that. It's not anything that's wrong with him. He is just not exactly a massive, rangy ball carrier, which is fine. It's fine. But it's a problem for us, obviously, from an attacking sense, because then we fail to then create chances as frequently in that kind of right-hand side. And we all know what our issues are on the left-hand side. We don't exactly create chances consistently on the left-hand side. And then it just equates to us just not really creating that many chances. because then teams just pack the middle, realise we're not really going to do much wide, and then it leads to us obviously not scoring as many goals as we want to, right? And then kind of then over-indexing the one or two chances that we get. Like if he had just scored that one chance, but in reality, you want to be creating more chances so that you don't think so much about the chances that you miss. So I think you're quite right. I think first half, I think he'll admit himself he wasn't good. He was not good. But second half, he really, really came into his own. I think second half he was a lot better, and really got to give him props really, because I think it was a real, especially from like about the 70th minute onwards. I think he was outstanding, to be honest. I think he was very, very good.
Yeah, and I mean, then hitting a shot from 25 yards out. Can't say that, keeper didn't do a great job with it, in fairness. But again, you have the confidence to take the shot now. And that is exactly to everything that you were saying. Whereas at the beginning, he was overplaying it, overthinking it, taking the one touch too many. And then he's like, okay, yeah, I'm just
going to hit it. Yeah, like he got the ball and he drove past the guy and he just did a little drop of the shoulder. It was beautiful. Made the space, cracked it. And that's what you want. You want to have to make the keepers make the saves, That's the thing I think we don't do enough. As much as we think, okay, well, let's try and get a very good chance and let's try and make sure the chance is going to be really good. Sometimes you just have to make the keepers work. And not every keeper is like Neuer. Not every keeper is going to be like, an amazing shot stopper. They're going to have bad moments like every player does, right? And you have to be able to take that chance, because keepers, when there are players in front of them and they miss the flight of the ball, they're gonna naturally miss chances sometimes. The ball's gonna hit their hand and go in, and I think that's the important thing.
I think exactly spot on, really. And then, thinking moving ahead a little bit in terms of a player who can't stop getting headlines now. He's the third youngest, or sorry, the third oldest, or whatever, third oldest teenager to score. English teenager to score in the knockout phase of the Champions League. Nwaneri, I mean, just again, I think the difference a little bit with what we're talking about and how we might talk about football in general is that we're just so interested in the way in which players, how they move towards the ball, how they take certain chances. And I think Nwaneri, in that moment, he's coming into the box, the speed at which the ball is coming to him, and then how he hits that shot with so much venom and uses the momentum almost of the pass from Nwaneri to then get it into the back of the net, and the keeper didn't even know it was going past him, was exceptional. And it shows just the level of maturity of a player that we're beginning to see come through again, he's not even 18 yet, and he's playing at a level, and also just even positionally, like, I think to the point that you were making before, I think we were at our best when we're more fluid and we rotate more. And we saw Nwaneri basically coming in sort of on the far left-hand side of the 6-yard box to be able to get on the end of that pass from Nwaneri. And it's just showing, the range that this kid has. Yeah, what did you particularly like about his performance yesterday?
For someone so young, I think his shooting technique is exceptional. I think cut inside left curler that he's always looking to pop in, either the bottom corner or the top corner. I think his defensive work rate is something that I noticed as well, which is quite good. His ability to kind of sprint back. So they had Noah Lang on the left wing for them. And he's a very good player. He's a very good player, very, very, very strong runner, very pacey, very skillful. 1v1 against anyone. Timber is an absolute colossus at the back, and he's a fantastic fullback. And I don't think he needs much help, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that Nwaneri wasn't there and he wasn't actually doubling up on him and making sure he was there. So as much as he was so good going forward, and I think because we tended to just be in attacking situations more often yesterday because we just dominated the ball, when he was needed to be kind of a defensive support, his sprint speed to get back in his commitment, I think it just shows, and it's just testament to kind of the way he is as a player and his maturity, but also the way Arteta kind of drills it into all of the players in the team. Like, this is what we expect, because that's exactly what Saka does when Saka's playing. He doesn't shy away from the defensive responsibility of making sure he's helping out his fullbacks. So probably the most impressive thing I think was just generally his overall just football IQ and his ability to kind of understand that, I am one of the better players on the pitch. I am someone who is probably one of the best attackers on this pitch, and I'm going to take that responsibility. I'm not going to pass off the responsibility. So there was one moment, I think you probably remember, where he gets the ball and he takes it from the left wing and he drives past Rice, and Ødegaard's asking for it, and he just drives past Ødegaard as well. He's like, you know what, I'm good, man. I'm going to take this shot, And younger players won't do that usually, But I think it speaks to the culture that we foster in the football club, that he feels that he can do that and that he's not going to get kind of like stick from the senior players of like, oh, why did you? Because even if he smashed it, it was a decent shot. I think the keeper saved it maybe. But even if he smashes it over the bar, I don't think he's going to get stick from Ødegaard. I don't think he's going to get stick from Rice. I don't think he's going to get an earful from anyone, because they're going to say, you know what, keep doing that, keep pushing past. And I think that was probably the most impressive thing. I think it was just his confidence. What about yourself? What did you think was probably the most impressive thing?
Yeah, I mean, every single week he seems to impress me more and more, really. Precisely to what you said, I think what we're going to need in what is ever left of the season is more responsibility across the pitch of players taking their shots. It's something that's been labelled at Arsenal for many years, is that we try to pass the ball into the back of the net, and I think, probably even to Arteta's detriment to an extent, I think that's probably how he also likes his teams to score goals. But and I think Nwaneri, exactly as you mentioned, he's not afraid. And that's the biggest thing. There's just no fear in him.
Yeah,
The same goes for Lewis Skelly, but with Nwaneri, it's just, he's happy to give me the ball, and I'll take on my man if I need to. If I need to cross it in and find you in the box, I'll find you, or I'll hit that shot and make the keeper work for it. And I think, again, it's even the power that he generates on his shots as well. He has a range of shooting, which I think is just super impressive at such a young age.
Basically from that Brighton game, I think when he started and he scored, I think that was the moment we were like, oh God, like, he might be the answer here. Unfortunately, he got a bit of an injury in that game, and I think that's another thing. We have to be careful not to kind of overwork someone who's had a few muscular injuries, and you don't want to put too much of a load on him at the moment, because then he's going to break down, and we don't want that. But equally, some of the best players in the world, Mbappe, Saka, Lamine Yamal, they are all from very young ages. And in the past, Fabregas, Rooney, Owen, Walcott, like, they played from a very young age, and they played consistent minutes from a very young age. And yeah, you could argue that means that when they got to their 30s, they kind of broke down a bit. But in reality, if you're having a career and even like, for example, Sterling, like, played from a very young age, and he's not having, and again, we can talk about this a bit later, but another episode, but he's not having the best time now. But when you play football for that consistently for that long, it's going to happen naturally, right? 15 years down the line of playing high level football, you probably are going to break down a little bit, or you have to change your game a little bit. So I think it's important to understand that, like, sometimes if you're good enough, you're going to play. You're going to play. That's it. Yeah.
And I think that's the expectation that, Saka is like, if you want to be the best player in the world in your position, Messi plays 60, 70 games a season and he doesn't break down. Of course, you're absolutely right. I think managing load is crucial at these very young developmental years, because all the examples that you mentioned, particularly Sterling for instance, might be that later on in your career, in your 30s, you might struggle, but then
So what you want to do is you want to maximize your career in the time you have. No, we need to just accept that if you're good enough, you're going to play. And I think that's kind of moving us on to probably the one last thing, maybe what we want to talk about before we kind of talk about maybe the game on Sunday, and maybe just a few thoughts about that, which was if and when we get Saka back, which again I think probably isn't going to be as soon as people think, just because I think grade 3 hamstring tears are not something that you want to rush back from, especially when you're an explosive player. You need to really make sure you rehab that properly, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
But naturally, what are your thoughts about kind of where Nwaneri fits in? I say best 11. I think that can change depending on who you're playing. But what are your thoughts on where he fits in when Saka's back, really? Because at the moment he's playing right wing.
I think so. There's a couple of points you pull together there in a really succinct way. One of which is, if you're good enough, you play. And that's fundamentally what Nwaneri is at this stage, right? He's so good. He's having such positive effects in it across the team. It's like almost crazy not to play him. So then, Saka is still fundamentally our best player. So you have to try and find a way to be able to accommodate him. I think in a sort of practical sense, you're right. I would imagine Arteta will gradually bring him into the side so that he doesn't suffer any immediate relapse or something like this by being played too much too quickly. However, if we want to play the best 11 game, and we know there's certain very quite famous podcasters who will say it's no longer a best 11. It's about having yeah, exactly. And you're looking at games in like sections and game states, and you need, depending on the opposition, the way in which you want to unlock them. And I think game for your life, I think you'd still want to have Saka in the side. I think we've over evangelized
Yeah,
Rice at number 8 now, so we can't not have
yeah.
Rice at 8. Otherwise we're gonna look like pricks. So then I would, like the way he took his goal and how, and even to the example that you said that he like bombed on ahead of Rice and on the left hand side, and he said, "No, thank you, Ødegaard. I'm going to carry on and take this." And then he was even in that same
Yeah.
position when Lewis Skelly crossed the ball into him and he scored his goal. Why can't he play off the left wing?
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. If you managed to kind of come across this organically and have a listen, first podcast that we were recording, obviously. So there's been a few little hitches in kind of the platform that we were using. There's a lot of content kind of towards the end about, you know, where Nwaneri fits in the team, what our kind of thoughts are going into Sunday about the United game at Old Trafford, and we had a little bit on the increase in ticket pricing as well that unfortunately we've had to cut just because it just wasn't syncing up very well. So I thought I'd just give you this little outro and just say, hopefully in the next episode we'll be able to kind of make it flow a little bit better. But do bear with us, obviously it is the first time that we are recording, so there's obviously going to be a few hitches and things like that. However, just want to say thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully we will catch you next week on the next episode. Take care. Bye bye. Hey everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. If